Hey, we're back. This is John.
It's Paul.
And it's Eric.
And it's What If Geeks, and we are here with episode 3 of Moon Knight. Our review of this really weird fucking show that I'm loving more and more.
Yeah.
So in light of I've got my Moon Knight background, but in light of a no Moon Knight T-shirt, I've got, it's Marvel's version of Batman, so I've got Batman.
Right.
And conveniently, it works with the next one we're going to. Oh, there you go. You got Star Wars.
I got Star Wars.
We have a geeky.
Technically, there's some Star Wars shit happening in this episode. Yeah. They turn back time and whatever.
Yeah. Kevin Smith's got his podcast, Fat Man on Batman, but now he's lost all the weight, so I've decided to do Batman on a Fat Man. All right, so Moon Knight episode 3 was titled "The Friendly Type." I know normally Eric does like a whole bunch of who directed what, this, that, whatever, but I think it's pretty much all the same shit, right? Right now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so you guys go look up who's directing it. It's okay. We're just gonna go right into the fucking review. We last left Mark/Steven. They had lost the Scarab, and the last thing we see was them laying in front of a bed with a bottle of Jack Daniels in front of them, or drinking it, and opening up the curtains from a hotel room and looking out onto the deserts of Egypt, right? And I want to come back to that later. So now we open up on Layla explaining how she found Mark/Steven, and basically talking about the stuff with the Scarab and everything to somebody while she's getting a passport to go home, which would be Egypt. And I'm not exactly 100% sure who this woman is. I don't think they ever say her name. But obviously she was somebody who did this type of work for Layla's father, because they discuss Layla's father in this. The woman asks Layla, what would your father think of you? And says his little scarab, right? So there's all this Egyptian mythology type of thing just buried in all of their lives. So we learned that her father was an archaeologist as well, and whether or not he would be disappointed in her for what she's doing. And she says she's not stealing these artifacts. She's taking back what's been stolen and bringing it back to the rightful owners, and then keeping some of them. I think I pretty much covered it, right?
And there's she says, the lady making the fake passport says something about, his dig sites weren't places for children. So you get the sense that either he was, either robbing these tombs or something like that.
Yeah, or at least this woman, while she cared about Layla's father and worked for him for a long time, because she says, she missed the work or whatever, or however she words it. But I think maybe she cared for Layla when she was a child and didn't want her getting hurt or whatever. So they've got a history together from when Layla was young. But I mean, they don't say her name and they don't really brush up on it at all. So I don't know what the hell's going on there, but maybe we'll find out later. But then we go to the opening credits, and then we reopen on the desert, and there's Arthur Harrow and his people, and he's using the Scarab compass thing to search for Amit's tomb. And they think they find it. And then one of his people runs up and says, Mark Spector's in Cairo and tracking them. But he tells her, don't worry, she's here, meaning Amit. So they found the tomb, or so he thinks. Then we cut to Mark chasing somebody on the rooftops, but by the time he catches up with where the guy is, the guy's been stabbed in the gut by 3 men. So it is funny. Again, I give all credit to Oscar Isaac in this show, because he's acting the shit out of it. This show does not work without him. Without an actor of his caliber, this show does not work at all. He's amazing in the show. When he catches up and he sees him drop the guy's body, he literally just goes, "Ah, you killed him? I was talking to him." So he's like, "Now I got to talk to you." You know, it's just the way he does it. Like his delivery is so amazing. So of course, he wants to find out where Harrow is. These are Harrow's guys. They're not giving him up, so they start fighting. The one thing that I picked up on this, and then I'll let you guys kind of jump in here. While he's fighting them, there's one that's pretty much a kid. I mean, he's maybe 18 tops, so he's definitely younger than the rest of them. Every time he goes to attack Mark, Mark fights him off, but he's much more lenient and gentle with him than he is with these other two guys. Like he just kind of backhands him, like he treats him like a kid.
He almost like bitch slaps him. It's a Will Smith slap.
Instead of full closed fist punch, right? Like he does.
Yes, exactly. Like he's taking it easy on this kid because there's something in Mark that he's got the same thing where, if you remember last episode, Stephen turned to Harrow and said, "You're killing children." I draw the line of killing children. Yeah. They're the same person, so he won't hurt kids, So it hit me real quick that I was like, oh, he's not going to hurt this kid. He's just trying to stop him from hurting him, and it was cool. So, all right, who wants to pick it up?
Well, I want to talk about. I kind of like the knife fight scene, like the way they did the choreography and stuff. Especially when that guy fucking licks the knife and he just punches him in the face.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah. Because how many times in any other movie do they do dumb shit like that and then they keep going fighting, right?
Yeah.
Well, so this guy does this shit and Mark takes it as an opportunity to punch him right in his fucking nose.
Yeah, I thought that was fucking hilarious. But I noticed watching this, and in fact, this happens in almost every fight scene in Moon Knight so far, but he actually takes blows. Like he's not like a perfect fighter. Like you might get the idea from the first episode when he blacks out and comes back and everybody's knocked down that he's like a super badass, and he is a badass. But he fights these guys and they're getting licks in all over the place, right?
Oh yeah, they're tossing him around a bit.
Yeah.
And the thing that I thought about when I was watching this particular fight scene is, well, why the fuck doesn't he don the suit?
Right.
Like, why does he just? I mean, maybe he just doesn't want people to see him. I don't know, it seemed weird.
It was also I don't know. Maybe he can't. Like I'm not super up to speed on my Moon Knight, what he can and can't do. But every time he's gotten the suit on, it's been dark.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, the only thing I know about Moon Knight from the comics, outside of the brief little things we've talked about that we haven't mentioned yet, or maybe we did once briefly, is I think that his powers strengthen and weaken with the different phases of the moon. Now, obviously, I mean, if that's the case, then, well, I mean, no moon, no power. So, yeah. I mean, that would make sense. That makes a lot of sense.
But, this happens later, so we don't talk about it now, but to keep Eric's points going, when he does don the suit later on, he's kind of getting his ass handed to him.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he's stabbed several times. So it's not like he's a perfect fighter. He's strong and seemingly invincible. But he's not a great fighter.
Yeah. I want to talk about
he's a mercenary
too, but I think we should wait till that later scene. So right when he's about to kill one of the dudes, he's got the knife to his neck. He sees his reflection, right? The Stephen reflection, and he says, "Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it." But then he rolls his eyes back, and something happens, and Mark comes to in a cab. Now, I thought this was weird because Stephen never takes over in a fight. If he's already there, he might try to fight for a minute, but then he keeps, he says, Mark, it's your turn, or whatever, you save us.
Yeah.
Right. He doesn't stay there and fight. So I thought that was really strange that somebody took over, and they don't show you who. And this is where I got the first thought that there might be a third personality somewhere in here. And it's potentially not coincidental, since I know from reading the backstory on Marvel that the third personality of his is a cab driver. Now, granted, he's not driving a cab, but the fact that it comes two in a cab, may just be a sort of subtle hint at there being another personality. And we'll get more of that later in this episode.
Yeah. So I want to discuss the personalities more in depth later.
Yeah, I've got a question when we do that.
All right. So yeah. So then I guess so when he's in the cab, when he wakes up in the cab, he sees two of Harrow's men that he was fighting. He chases them again, and he corners one, and then Steven asks him again to stop. And he gets knocked out, and then he wakes up, and he's on the side of a cliff with all three of them. Two of them are dead, and the kid is crawling away, bleeding. So he asks Steven, "What did you do?" And Steven is in a reflection. He's like, "I didn't do anything. It wasn't me." So Khonshu tells Mark, "Hold the kid over the ledge. He'll talk." And Mark's like, "He's a kid." He goes, "He'll talk." So he grabs the kid and he holds him over the ledge. "Where's Harrow?" And he's got him by the tie or whatever. And the kid says, "All praise Amit," and cuts his fucking tie and plummets to his death. And Mark's sitting there. And again, that's where you get the thing where he doesn't want to kill the kid. He's got this haunted look in his face, like he can't believe that just happened. And one of the funniest things that's happened in this episode, Khonshu's sitting there just kind of kneeling, looking over the side, and he goes, "Huh, I thought he'd talk." I was like, this motherfucker.
I love when Marvel does that, because it's the perfect sort of, it hits the right tone of being intense, right? You watch the kid, you look down, right? He comes to, the other two guys are dead. He's holding the kid, and then there's a comedic moment, right? It's perfect.
Oh yeah, they do a great job with this.
Yeah,
they know exactly what they're doing. So, he and Steven both, they argue for a second about, Mark's like, "Steven, what the hell is wrong with you?" And Steven's like, "Me? You caused the bloodbath. Look at the body count, whatever." So it's neither one of them, or they're both arguing their case to why it's not them. Right. So again, we'll get back to that in a minute. So then Mark tells Khonshu, they say, "All right, well, we need something else. What about the other gods? Basically, will they help against Amit?" And Khonshu basically explains that summoning the other gods is a bad idea. If they're angered, they're going to imprison me in stone. And Mark's like, "Well, do you have any other good ideas?" And Khonshu says, "I have a bad idea," and disappears. I love that line too. He's like, "I have a bad idea." And then he causes a fucking lunar eclipse. So Mark's like, "Why did you do that?" He says, "It's something the gods can't ignore." So then, of course, the gods show up, and Khonshu explains they're all going to summon their avatars, which are scattered all over the world. So he explains to Mark that there's going to be a portal for each avatar to come to where they're at. And a portal opens up, but basically a stone wall opens right in front of him. And he goes in, and all the other avatars are there. And one avatar, and I forget who she says she's the avatar for, one of the goddesses.
Music and magic or something like that. Music and love. I don't know, something.
Yeah. It's Aphrodite. Wrong religion. But basically, she's like, "Did Khonshu tell you how this works?" And Mark's like, "No." She's like, "It takes some getting used to." So they go in, and all the gods take over the bodies, and then Khonshu takes over Mark's body, and the gods ask, basically, what his deal is, why he did that. And this is also one of the funniest moments, because Oscar Isaac, when he's doing the voice of Khonshu coming out of Mark, is funny as shit. It's like Mark is trying to fight it. So he does a really good job of this whole Mark Spector fighting this possession while Khonshu was trying to talk. And it's very kind of over the top, but he basically explains, Harrow's trying to resurrect Amit, and they don't believe him, so they summon Amit. They summon Harrow, which again, this is really cool because Harrow just comes in nice and calm and tells him, "Look, Khonshu abuses his avatars. He's jealous. He does the perfect explanation to why this is not happening. He's like, Khonshu says he's trying to resurrect Ahmet. Harrow says, I was walking in the desert. That's all I was doing. I was just in the desert, and so the gods don't believe Khonshu because Harrow tells them, look, Khonshu's jealous and he's full of rage, and his avatar is broken and he's not well. So they basically asked to speak to Mark Spector, and Mark comes forward and they ask him, are you unwell? And he says, yes, I need help. And he says, but that doesn't change the fact that this guy is like, he's dangerous and what he's doing is wrong. So, but they immediately ignore him because they tell him this is a safe space, which as soon as I heard safe space, my ass clenched. I was like, here we go, Disney. I was like, God damn it. But it worked in the scene. Yeah. This is a safe space to let us know if you're being manipulated by Khonshu. And Mark's like, I'm not the one on trial. It's him. He's doing wrong. So basically, they just go with the whole fact that Khonshu is manipulating his avatar, and they shut the whole thing down.
They say he hasn't done anything wrong. Like, Harrow hasn't done anything wrong to this point.
Right. And before they went there, Khonshu said, our case against Harrow has to be like perfect.
Yeah.
And without Harrow actually doing anything wrong, well, it's just your word against his, and they're not going to take your word. They've already banished you. So they give a warning, like, manipulate this guy again and we'll imprison you.
Yeah.
And then everybody leaves except for that one avatar. And she stops Mark and tells him, look, there's another way. There was a magi who, like, she kind of believes him, right? And she's like, look, there was this magi who was in charge of guarding Amarant's tomb. He knew the location. Find his sarcophagus and you'll find the location of Amarant's tomb. So then Mark leaves, runs into Layla, who's now home. They have their back and forth, right? And he explains what he needs to do, and she's like, well, I guess conveniently, she knows who's got the sarcophagus, right?
Well, and they're in the street, and he talks to some street vendor, and he's like, I'm looking for so-and-so's sarcophagus, and the guy backs off.
Yeah.
And then Layla shows up, and he looks around, and Khonshu's standing on a building, like keeping an eye on Mark. And that's when they're like, I think I know who's got the sarcophagus. So get on some like Islamic party boat. And head over to this this massive mansion. And then on the way, they're having the conversation about their past and being married and all that stuff, while this other group starts partying, and someone's like, la 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 la.
They go the sponsors.
No, that happened. That
happened. I know, but with three white guys doing that, so I'm sure there's a cultural appropriation thing in there somewhere.
Because I always thought that was fake. La, 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 la. I thought that was fake. And then somebody does it.
No, it's real. It's real.
Oh, no, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of when. Oh, so they pull up to this enormous party.
Well, Mark, there is that one part there where at least like Mark like tries to sincerely apologize for how he's treated her.
Yeah.
And she really doesn't want to hear it.
No, and she says he's never been good about talking about important things, and she just wanted to be part of his life, and he pushed her away.
Yeah.
So they get to the big party. They have to get their story straight. on who they're pretending to be, and I guess this guy is a buyer of ancient artifacts. It's not super clear how Layla knows him.
I kind of got the idea like he was an old fling or something.
Yeah,
especially the way he acts toward her.
And he's doing some sort of Middle Eastern medieval knights. Right,
yes, I really wanted a turkey leg.
Yeah, and so they're doing this thing, and
or shawarma. Good. Sorry.
So Layla introduces Mark as her husband. Then they have some fake name. Tells him that he wants to see the sarcophagus, and the guy's sort of unsure about this whole thing, but he lets him go in. And that's where they're trying to piece together what are the clues in this thing. And that's when he looks at, and he, in the reflection of the area where the sarcophagus is Steven. And he's like, all right, Steven, I need your help. He's like, let me take over. And Mark's like, nope, you're not taking over.
Yep. So Steven explains that look, you got to fold these pieces of cloth to make a map.
Yeah.
And you'll make the constellations that you need. This is supposed to go by the constellations to find the tomb.
Right. And Mark's not doing it right. And so finally he relents and lets Steven take over. Steven starts to do the thing, but the main security guy has his gun out.
Yeah.
And he pulls the gun on him and Layla. Fight ensues. He ends up making Mark / Steven get on his knees. And I think that's the point where Steven relents and lets him take over.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of back and forth with them since last episode about who's going to maintain control of the body.
Yep.
And that's when, because you get Mark as the suit first. They're there, they're surrounded, and Harrow shows up. No. Mark says, let me take over and let me do this. And Steven says, okay. He relents, he lets Mark take over, and then Harrow shows up.
Yep.
It's like, whatever they're offering you, I can offer you more. And he tells the guy's name is Mogart or something like that. Mm-hmm. He tells him, look, don't listen to them. He says, let me show you what this is. And he goes, I'm going to show you what the power is. And he's got the runes on his staff start to glow. And I'm still, the way they glow, it keeps reminding me of the fucking Infinity Stones. So I'm like, there's like everything in the MCU is wrapped around everything else. So I'm not 100% convinced that half of this shit doesn't involve something else. But they glow purple, and he does this whole chant, and he shows the guy this power, and it destroys the sarcophagus, right? Well, he goes to walk away, and while they're all talking, they turn around and they're like, he's gone, and Mark's gone. Yep. And they look up, and there's Moon Knight standing up on top of the roof. Fight ensues, and like we said earlier, he's not the best fighter. He fights. He's a really good fighter, but it's not like he's like fucking Superman running around in there. He's a good fighter, but he's getting his ass kicked because there's multiple people there.
Yeah.
They're all running at him they're coming at him with like fucking spears and stabbing him. And I think this is also a good way that the MCU does of using the fact that he's not a great fighter to show you how powerful Khonshu is in protecting him. Because he gets stabbed multiple fucking times. Through vital organs, and he's still fighting. Mm-hmm. And he winds up fighting them off, but Layla goes back to gather the pieces of the cloth to try to get the map together. And that's when Morgoth's head guard shows up, and she fights him.
She does a pretty good job.
She does a really good job of fighting him, which I guess, kind of tells you why Khonshu wanted her as his next avatar. But she's kicking his ass. And Oh well, they're kicking each other's asses. Let's be real about it. She realizes that Mark's getting his ass kicked, so she stabs this fucking guy in the chest with like the, ironically, moon-shaped necklace around her neck. Right? She takes off 2 pieces and they're blades, and she stabs this fucker in the chest and goes to save him. Oh, that's also when those guys start shooting at her, and Mark wraps the cape around her. So now you know the cape is bulletproof too. So that was convenient. What else? Eric, you've been
it's a little bit confusing what it is, because when he's protecting only himself, there's bullet holes being made in the cape. Then he uses it to protect her and nothing's happening. And then at one point in that scene, he flings it and actually knocks bullets back, it looks like, towards the guys that were shooting at him. So I'm not sure. I mean,
it was kind of like the Wonder Woman lasso of all things.
He's also, when he's getting stabbed through, he's fine. He looks over and Layla's in trouble, and he just and he like sort of ends them kicking his ass. Like he snaps the things off, knocks those guys out, takes one blade, throws it, hits Mogart, and then goes and saves her.
Multiple blades at once.
Yeah, but then goes. But like he's like, all right, I've had enough of this. Right, I've had enough of you guys stabbing me. This is over.
Yeah. Now I will say one of the coolest things out of this, again, like the last episode, like when he's fighting the jackal or whatever, they do a lot of really cool shots out of like comic book covers. And there is that one shot when he jumps off the roof to attack those guys. His cape goes out in that moon crescent shape. Oh, yeah. And that's right out of the comics. Like that's, you know, so it was literally like this comics come to life. It was perfect. So yeah, so he ends them, and even as Mogart is like, he tries to attack and then he leaves, he hits him in the back, but he fades off into some smoke. So he obviously, you know, you don't see a body, so he ain't dead.
So well, back. Let's stop for a minute and talk about that. So you have noticed that this episode was dedicated to Gaspar Ulliel, I think his name is. Did you notice that?
No.
Dedication. Well, that's that actor. He apparently died in some sort of tragic skiing accident a few months ago. After this, so I guess
I saw it in the credits, but I didn't know who it was.
Yeah, so that's him.
The name, like in loving memory of.
That's exactly, and that's the guy that plays Mogart. So the actor is dead in real life.
Okay, so you haven't seen a body, he's not dead is very
well. So I want to talk about that for a minute.
Again, as long as they shot all his scenes, he's not.
Again, not knowing this comic very well, I went back and read some stuff. So Anton Mogart in the comic is actually a villain with a costume and everything called Midnight Man, who fights Moon Knight and apparently holds himself pretty well. And then he eventually gets killed in the comic. But you know, the Midnight Man persona or whatever is a fully like caped out, all dark blue, whatever, you know, with a mask and everything. So they could have anybody do that.
No, I gotta start reading Moon Knight shit.
And yeah, so you know, I don't know if it means anything. It may have just been, you know, a reference to a comic thing without any intent to introduce it, but it also could be a villain. They're gonna
probably plans later to bring him around, because there is enough. Well, we'll get into it later. All right. What I was gonna say, sorry. Yeah, so they have a really good battle, back and forth, whatever. They run off. And okay, hang on. Rainer, huh? Yeah. All right, love you. Bye. All right. So he goes off into the smoke, and then they take off, and they go out into the desert. And Mark and Layla are trying to fix the map now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing else happens in between that?
Nothing important.
Okay. So they realize they cannot do this, and she tells them, like, you know, we need Steven. And he's like, okay, fine. Now he does do something that I find incredibly stupid. He rips the mirror off the vehicle, right? So he can talk to Steven. Gathers up all the fragments of the cloth and walks out into the sand and drops it on the ground and holds the mirror and is like, all right, Steven, look, take over. It's your time. And Steven takes over. Like, you had a clean top of a vehicle to work on, and you're gonna throw all this shit in the fucking sand to try to work. It was, I know it was for dramatic effect, but it was just like,
I think we missed something.
okay.
I'm not sure if it happens back at the fight, or if it hasn't happened. Where's the point? And I can't remember if it's Hera who does it.
Oh shit! Else. Yes.
Good. When I think it's when Hera shows up with Mogart, because he starts telling him about. He looks at Layla, and he's like.
She says everyone's got secrets.
Yeah, he's like, I know that, the stuff about your dad, and then he looks at Mark. He's like, Mark, to tell her what happened.
He says, Layla, you've always, your issue is you've always been trying to live up to your father, and blah 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 blah, whatever. And then turns to Mark and is like, and you've
done some stuff.
Talk to her. You've got stuff to talk to her about. Yeah. I was like, oh, Mark fucking killed her father.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Because that was it. That was the key thing that was on the way to working on the map. She asks him what the fuck he was talking about. And he was like, nothing, you're trying to get in your head.
Liar. That guy's nuts. Yeah, forget it.
I also read about that, if you're interested, from the comics.
Sure, go ahead.
So her father in the comics is an archaeologist. He gets killed by some mercenary dude. Mark doesn't do it, but he doesn't stop it from happening.
Like a Peter Parker, Uncle Ben thing?
Which is probably the same, or in the same realm of the archaeologist that the cops were referring to, because there's another mercenary that he worked with called Bushwhacker that we're going to get into here in a minute.
Yeah, it's Bushman in the comics.
Bushman. Yeah, Bushman. Sorry. Yeah. Bushwhacker, whatever.
Yeah, so
Bush something.
Yeah, in the comic version, Mark was working for Bushman, which is the reason he didn't stop the murder from happening at the moment, but then he does later stop Bushman. But it's too late for her dad, obviously.
Yes, okay. But that's the one I want to talk about here in a minute. All right, cool. So Steven fixes the thing, and it's in the shape of a star, and they're trying to look at it. She's shining her flashlight into it. She's like, oh, look, there's pinpricks in here that are constellations. And Steven's like, yeah, but they're all wrong. And then Khonshu starts talking to him, and it says, it's because the map was made 2,000 years ago. So the stars have shifted slightly. So, you have to have the night from 2,000 years ago. He says, I can give you that. So Steven, that's what Steven puts on his Mr. Knight suit. And Khonshu walks him through. Again, not really, he doesn't, where up until now, he's just called him like, the simpleton, or, the worm. Yeah. He doesn't do any of that. He tells him, let me show you. And then he says, do what I do. And the two of them are doing this whole magic thing in the desert, and the skies spin backward. They basically rewind time so that they can see, but everyone else can see this happening too, this light show that's going on. So the constellations go up, and Layla uses her iPad to take a picture of the constellations, and she's like, it's working, and she's got the map now to get to the tomb, right? But of course, you flash over to the avatars for the gods, and their eyes all light up. They get taken over by the gods again. The gods all convene, and they're like, yeah, well, you done fucked up now, kid.
We told you.
We told you. And they do their spell, and they imprison him. And you see, Khonshu says, and Khonshu feels it happening, and tells Steven, tell Mark, once I'm in prison, to come get me. Come save me. and his body is disintegrating while he's trying to help him get the sky the right way. So the last of his energy is used to show Steven the proper sky, and these gods form this rock into a little statue of Khonshu, which is what Paul was correcting me on earlier when I just said they imprisoned him. my mediocre set list wasn't good enough for Paul. So they imprison him in this little Khonshu statue, and then he fades out. And then you cut back to the desert where you see him fade out, and Steven collapses. He's like, I can't do this. I can't hold it anymore. He fades out and passes out. And Layla goes to grab him. She's trying to talk to him. She's like, Steven, Mark. He's like, anybody? Bueller, somebody answer me. And he's passed out in her arms in the desert. Khonshu is in prison, and we fade to black. So midway through the season, we're completely fucked. That's where we're at right now.
Yeah, there's one other scene that I really like. We were talking about how good Oscar Isaacson is in this, in the show. I think it's where he's talking to Mark is talking to Steven in the mirror in the desert, and I think this is where it is. And he lets him take over, and he goes from. In the same scene, they don't do the fade out thing and the fade back in thing. It just stops being Mark and starts being Steven. Yeah. And she goes out, and he just changes, like his face, sort of like just the look on his face changes, the way he holds his head and his face, and then the new accents. And I'm like, that's really good.
Yeah, and
he was just two people right there.
The way he looks at her, the admiration he has for her, like the attitude he has toward her changes immediately too. Yep. It's amazing. Yeah,
he's really good.
All right, so let's just say overall we're halfway through the series, right, or the season. Whether or not there's going to be another season, who knows? What do you guys think so far? What did you think of this episode? What do you think so far?
I really like the episode.
Me too.
I'm more interested in the story than I was in the beginning, I think.
Yeah.
It's a lot of sort of weird mystery, right? Where they're not explaining things much. They're just kind of throwing you into the middle of it, which they did from the first episode, I guess. But in some ways, it's intriguing.
Yeah. And for me, it's like I said before, it's a unique feeling for me to. This is the first character they've got where I really don't have an in-depth history with them. So,
yeah, I'm the same. I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know like the storylines and where shit might be headed. I read that after the fact when I see something. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
and I just don't have that inside knowledge.
The way they're telling this story is not. Someone just said it. Like, we're dropped in the middle of this story.
Yeah.
Right. Mark Spector's been the Avatar for a while. We don't know. Some of my questions are, does Khonshu pick crazy people to be his avatar, or does being the avatar make you crazy? Right. So did he pick Harrow because he's off, or is he off now because he was the avatar?
Right, because Harrow says something in this episode to Khonshu in that tribunal. He says, thank you for, or no, he says it after they imprison him.
Yeah, he's like, I'm the way I am because of you.
Yes, he says, can he hear me? And they're like, we think so. And he walks down when nobody else is around. He says, thank you for pushing me to the point where I broke. Mm-hmm. And now I understand what my mission is. So does it, is he hard on his avatars? Yeah, maybe, whatever. Did he push Harrow to the point of breaking? Is Mark Spector the perfect avatar for him to the point where did Spector create the Steven persona to protect Layla?
Yeah, right.
There's a lot going on here there's a lot. Yeah. So on that, on the note of personalities, So we know in the comics that, from our research, there's a third personality, Jake Lockley, who in the comics is a cab driver. And I know Eric alluded to the fact that he wakes up in a cab, and I thought it was funny. But I said offline before, because you were like, all right, yeah, but if it's Jake doing this shit, he's just a cab driver in the comics. And I said, but in the comics, Steven is a millionaire, like the Bruce Wayne type, and they're not doing that here. Yeah. So, and I've alluded once before, like, what if that third personality is like a bad one? Like, that's the one, like the real, like Harrow could be a villain, but what if one of his personalities is also a main villain in this series? That's doing shit. They said it twice in here that neither one of them did this, did a killing or did this or did that, right? So Steven and Mark are arguing with each other about shit that they're claiming neither one of them did. So obviously, if you're going to take it from the standpoint of the comics, it's got to be that third personality. There's something else that I thought about, and I did pick this up from another podcast I listened to. So I'll give credit to somebody else I don't want you to listen to, unless you're listening to me. They've been dropping little hints that there's more than just Steven and Mark in there. And I think one of the main ones, like they said, was at the end of the last episode when he wakes up with the bottle of Jack in Egypt. That's neither one of them. That's Jake. Because up until that point, Mark has always been mission-oriented, singular-focused. He hasn't shown any of that. But him waking up just drunk, whatever, it's definitely not Steven, but it's definitely not Mark either. And the way, up until that point, you just assumed it was Mark because he was the one in control when they went to Egypt, when they said, we got to find another way, we'll just beat him to the tomb, right? But what if that was Jake?
So I have a thought on this. And I don't think you're necessarily offer anything, but they made it clear he's got this DID thing, right? And in the real world, that happens usually when people have like severe trauma or whatever, right? They usually develop personalities to cope with different problems, right? That general, of course, I'm not a psychologist, but my general understanding. I thought it was interesting when they did that scene with Harrow when he was talking to the stone and he was saying, I actually, he said, tells him like, you broke me. And so I figured out my purpose, but he also says, I like doing that killing stuff for you. Right. And it made me think, well, if there is a third personality, maybe that's how Mark dealt with having to kill people and shit, is creating these other personalities to sort of like offload his stress and whatever that Khonshu is putting on him by being his avatar, by making him go kill people. And the Jake could be like the killer personality, right? Like he's not, or maybe it's not Jake, but the third personality could be like the real killer, like the one that enjoys cutting people's necks or whatever, right? And it's just a way for the real guy, Mark, to adapt or deal with, cope with the shit Khonshu is putting him through. Just a thought, but I mean, it'd be different than the comic, I think, if they did it that way, at least from what I know, but it seems like they're okay with changing things too, so.
Yeah, I think they found the perfect character where they can play around with some of the lore and be okay with it.
I think the other thing, I think the interesting thing about this show is, from a storytelling perspective, there's a very clear villain in Harrow, but there's not a true hero in what we think of in the rest of the Marvel universe, right? Purely good, in it for the right reasons, heroic type, right? The way there is in Falcon and Winter Soldier, Spider-Man, Iron Man, like all the other Marvel heroes in the universe are very heroic, by and large, don't kill people, don't have these huge body counts. Moon Knight's different. Like this is, and maybe that's why there's no other Marvel Universe references in this so far.
There actually are. And again, it took New Rockstars YouTube channel. They pointed out in episode 1, when you look at all the books in Steven's apartment, 2 of the books that are in there, one says something about Asgard, and the other one is about Wakanda. And those are the only references so far that I've seen.
I have another thing I read to bring up too.
But there's not even like, you know, there's not a kid wearing a Captain America t-shirt, right? There's not a, you don't pass by and there's a ad for Rogers the Musical, right? None of those obvious tie-ins.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. There's no obvious tie-ins. You're right.
Yeah. And Moon Knight, although he may do some heroic kind of things, or he doesn't want to hurt kids, and he's obviously fighting bad guys. His only real motivation is that he struck a deal with a god, and he has to fulfill that, and it's kind of whatever it takes to get it done.
Yeah, but like we've said before, I really do think that this is their dipping their toe in the water of the whole darker element to Marvel. Midnight Suns, which is actually a perfect timing because they did just drop all of the Netflix stuff that was a little bit darker, right? So all of this seems to be like really well timed. Like it was like Disney knew what the fuck was going to happen. They just know. So like he leads into Werewolf by Night, and he's got ties to Blade, and there are ties in there that could happen. Now, we only have 3 episodes left, so I don't see them doing anything major outside of maybe a mention or a small cameo or an end credit teaser, right? Because I even thought about like, all right, Harrow is obviously, he's got to be the big bad for this season because there's only 3 episodes left. So Moon Knight's got to stop him. But we were briefly mentioned earlier, Bushman, the other mercenary. There were 3 mercenaries in the comics that Mark, it was Mark, Bushman, and somebody else. And Bushman was a key, he was like a very, he was up there in Moon Knight's rogues gallery, if you want to call it that, because, I mean, nobody knows fucking Moon Knight anyway. But as far as his enemies, he's one of his arch enemies, right? But they do have a past where they work together. And to try to bring him in, I don't think they'd be doing that. I think they might, because they've cued in on, oh, look at all these archaeologists that died, when the cops bring it up, and then Harrow bringing up, to Mark, did you tell her what happened or whatever? And her father was an archaeologist who died. I think they're leading up to, maybe if they're going to have a season 2, then you bring in Bushman. You know what I mean? Like everything gets revealed that it wasn't really Mark, even though they're saying it was all him. Right to the end of the series, the season, maybe they'll kind of gleam onto the fact that no, he wasn't the only mercenary there. It wasn't him. He was actually the one good one. Kind of, they set up all this, oh, he's so bad, and then they do like maybe a flashback and they show that he was on the side trying to stop the guy and he killed all these guys, and that's Bushman or something like that. And then that would set up season 2 with another enemy. Maybe.
So
if they get somebody like Oscar Isaac to hang on for season 2, because son of a bitch.
So you were talking about earlier about that lady that talks to him in the chamber.
Yeah.
Her name is Yazil or something like that. Can't remember exactly what it was.
I don't remember it.
I read something about her too that I think is worth sharing because I think it may tie into what you were talking about a few minutes ago about references in the MCU. So she was that girl is that woman is the avatar for Hathor, right? They named the god.
Yeah.
In real Egyptian mythology, Hathor is like the goddess of love and music and pleasure or whatever, like an Aphrodite, right?
Yeah, like Paul said.
But there's another god. There's another god in Egyptian lore called Sekhmet, who's the like the god of war, like the Ares equivalent. But in the comic, what they did was made them one person. So Hathor is the daughter of Amun-Ra, who's like the Odin equivalent, right? He sends her at one point to go punish humanity and kill a bunch of people. And she transforms into Sekhmet, becomes this war god while she's doing it. So she almost has like a split personality thing in the comic, like Mark Spector, right? The reason this is interesting though is Sekhmet, again in Egyptian mythology, is related to Bast, who is like a panther god. And in Black Panther, he derives his power from Bast. So there may be some Black Panther tie-in they're working towards. And that woman who played that avatar is credited in all the rest of the episodes for this season. So there may be more coming and a way for them to link back to other things that are about to come, like new Black Panther movie.
All right. I'm all for it. Yeah, I've heard
that's borrowing storylines from the comics, and they'd have to change things here and there. But
I don't know. I heard Bast mentioned in other podcasts too. So it's all connected. So yeah, sweet. All right. Do we have anything else on this episode? I have nothing. All right. Cool. Just let's get on to Batman. All right. We will catch you guys next week. Let us know what you thought of episode 3. And if you have any differences of opinion in anything we're speculating on, because we have no idea what the fuck's going on still. We're halfway through this damn series. Like, subscribe, ring a bell. Hit us up at whatifgeeks.com, whatifgeeks@gmail.com, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we will see you next week in Egypt. And that's it. Good night, Tony.
Good night, tiny Khonshu statue.
Good night, kid who went over the cliff forever.